And Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome, K-Man, to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon. Good afternoon, Mr. Harris.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Solomon. I trust you had a good, Wednesday. Again, I'm saying that more so for my reminder than anybody else.
For my own sanity.
But if I do exactly for my own sanity, indeed. Happy Wednesday.
I just like
Wednesday, yes.
I just like the Matrix thing, Good Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
You've been living two separate lives. Apparently, in one life, you are a computer programmer. In the other life, you are a hacker.
Known by the name.
He says, you see, apparently one of these lives has a future. And the other one does not. And I might have missed something, but that is just the gist of it.
Well done. I'm always impressed by how word for word
the verbatim
movies. Verbatim, indeed. Clearly showing us and the listening audience what some of your favorite movies have been over the years.
Well, that was definitely. No, I don't know why they keep making the 1, the 2, and the 3, right? Because that just ruins it.
It does. Nothing ever beats the first.
Yeah, they only get it right the first time. That was the only time the real effort went in. After that, it just became cut, paste.
Well, it's kind of like the newest Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. Maybe a little spoiler alert for a lot of folks out there, but I haven't seen it yet either. But my enthusiasm for seeing it was somewhat, tapered, if not watered down when I was told, listen, man, not only is it not The Final Reckoning, because apparently there's a cliffhanger at the end to suggest you may have Mission Impossible 900 before that series is ever finished.
You can't beat those movies.
But again, the marketing hype surrounding it, in the opinion of at least one person here at Stingray Media who saw it, did not match up to the reality. So he was saying, if you're wanting to see The Final Reckoning, don't, was the recommendation given, which of course I'm not going to follow. I am going to go see it, but now with a degree of trepidation, if not anxiety, saying, man, I was really looking forward to being, having my mind blown, but clearly that's not going to be the case. We'll see.
Well, when I remember when I was young, it's like you had the Star Wars, right? That was another great one, right? Of course, you had Darth Vader,
Oh,
the heavy breathing.
Can't beat that.
And then it was
James
like,
Earl
Commander,
Jones.
set a course for Hoth. The rebels are there, and Luke Skywalker is with them. It's like everybody running around the house doing the same nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, stop breathing on me, will you?
No, Star Wars was
and don't forget the swords. Everybody made that noise, right?
There you go. No, that was an epic, what do you call it, mini-series? Because, they started with 3 and then they finished with 6.
Don't ask me for the label.
Ironically enough, though, we talk about sequels, obviously not being as good as the first. I didn't find that with Star Wars, but you couldn't really call Star Wars a sequel because it was really a continuation of the story. In some cases, they went forward. Other cases,
I think you started in the middle of the book somewhere.
Exactly. So it gave you sort of a full picture, but Star Wars didn't have that boring element that some of these sequels, like the Fast and the Furious. Oh, my God.
It's like Friday the 13th, part 13.
Race car drivers turned bank robbers, turned international fugitives because what? They drive fast. Oh, yeah, totally believable. Totally. It could happen. Not.
Yeah.
But that's all right, though. Movies are meant to be entertaining. They aren't necessarily meant to mimic reality. That's why it's called entertainment. You go to, allow your brain to sort of relax a little bit and not have to add that annoying little notion called logic to every question that you answer. Sometimes you just
You've never
Well,
watched a
yeah,
movie
we
with me, Mr. Harris.
I've never watched them. No, I have not watched the movie with you. I have not.
Hey,
had
pause,
that pleasure.
pause. You just watch it. You pause it. Hey, hold on. Let's think about that part.
Oh God, no, that would never work.
Yeah, no.
That would never work. Yeah, that's almost as bad as commercials,
No.
which I can't stand.
I used to do it all the time, even when I would listen to songs.
Uh-huh.
Remember back in the day with the little old the tape.
Had to be harder.
Are we
with the
showing our
cassette
age
tape.
or what? The tape. You had
Yeah.
to rewind the tape. And there I was, you're like one song. And then after a while, you look and there's your tape. There's got like a stretch in the middle there. Because you played that song.
Over and over and over.
And then you learn,
again.
then after a while, you buy a new one. Then you kind of learn a little trick that, you could always play it on that side and then flip it over. And then that was your way of rewinding.
Inside the childhood of Ellio Solomon, shared live and direct here on Bobo 103.1.
Hey,
FM.
listen, I had
Everything you wanted to know about him, but were afraid to ask.
I'm not shy to tell you. I mean,
Clearly.
I had fun. It was.
Clearly not.
I remember the summer times because it's mango time now, right?
Oh, yes. It is my... Speaking of which, I sampled my first seasonal mango just yesterday.
Boy,
It was of the East
I have probably
Indian
been
variety, which are always quite delicious.
I've probably been
Sorry,
being
I
very
digress. You were
selfish.
saying something.
No, you're right on track. I probably been being selfish because I had quite a few, Austin. I think I forgot you.
Oh!
But I remember I was grabbing like the
Stabbed in the
5-gallon
heart.
bucket.
He
5-gallon
brags
bucket, Austin, with the mangoes.
buckets. Not even one. He brags about consuming.
We're walking.
Buckets, ladies and gentlemen.
Jeez.
And you'd think his colleague and friend for so many,
many
years
years?
would have at least one or two, but nope.
You are
No
correct.
buckets for me, ladies and gentlemen.
I do deserve the social whip. I have sinned.
I need a pause button. Oh, look, I have the control of the board.
Turn down the volume.
Ellio's mic, for some strange reason, is not working anymore. What were you saying? No, can't hear you. You can't hear you.
His
There you
lips
go.
are moving, but I
You're
can't
back
hear what he's
again.
saying.
Quite right. Well, all joking aside, well, not really. We're going to continue
You
joking for
continue.
at least another half an hour. But welcome, K-Man, to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM on your radio dial. It's not all
Mangoes.
puns and humor. No, it's definitely not all mangoes, at least not for all of us, as we have quickly discovered. But anyway, certainly another open mic Wednesday here on the program. And if it's anything like the open mic we had yesterday, buddy, what a great conversation. Thank you for starting it off. I mean, I love having those
Yesterday, it was good.
organic sort of conversations that, there was no planning involved. It was just, I was thinking the other day.
I
And you
had a
share
thought.
those thoughts, and voila, we have an hour and a half worth of, I think, truly valuable conversation. So big up to you, my friend, my
Big up,
non-mango
massive.
sharing friend.
It was very good, and we thank the listeners for the good feedback as well. Much appreciated. Very
Yes,
encouraging.
It was very encouraging indeed. And of course, hopefully we'll have maybe another one of those again today. We shall see, but we do have a number of topics on the agenda, and we will do what we do to make it as interesting and informative as possible. Of course, we're broadcasting to you, as always, on your radio dial, 103.1 FM. 89.1 is no longer active. I had to explain to somebody just this week who said, how come I hear nothing on 89.1? I
I
said,
haven't heard you guys for weeks.
where have you been? Haven't we been warning you of this? But yeah, if you tune into 89.1, you will hear absolutely nothing. 103.1 is the new frequency, and that's, where you can find your favorite evening talk show, Straight Talk, here on Bobo FM. We're also simulcasting live, as usual, over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook under the search words Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page. They haven't kicked us off yet. I don't think they've quite, remembered. Are we still streaming them? But we won't tell them.
It's the
Neither
power.
will you.
It's the powers that be us.
It's the powers that be. Well, we're grateful for the powers that be that continue to host our program over their Facebook page, allowing us to reach as wide an audience as is possible. As I stated, today is going to be another open mic day. The phone lines are open, 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. A bit of good news before we start off with some of our substantive discussions. Topping the list, news coming from the Ministry of Health, advising the public that they are monitoring this new COVID variant. If I can just share a few excerpts from the media headlines. It reads, the Ministry of Health, Environment and Sustainability, together with the Public Health Department, has confirmed it is monitoring the emergence of a new COVID variant called NB181 or NB.1.8.1, but for brevity, we will call it NB181. The variant, descendant of Omicron, was first identified in Singapore in January and has since gained ground globally. Data from the World Health Organization gathered from GISAID, Global Virus Genome Database, shows that NB181 accounted for 10.7% of all sequenced COVID-19 cases worldwide between the 21st and 27th of April, up sharply from the 2.5% just a month earlier. The World Health Organization has now classified NB181 as a variant under monitoring, citing its increase in cases and hospitalizations in some countries. The global public health risk, however, is currently assessed as being low, as currently there are no reports of elevated disease severity associated with this variant. So, simply put, whilst there is a new name and a new branch of the virus which continues to evolve, if you do get it, the odds are you won't feel any worse or you won't suffer any more symptoms than you would have otherwise suffered if you received COVID in the first place, which is more flu-like symptoms that are associated with that. Although I've never had COVID, so I can't really tell you firsthand what the symptoms are like. Did you get it, or are you COVID-free like you are everything else free?
Well, as far as I'm aware, well, first of all, I didn't get the shot. Don't get me on that one, okay?
Oh, yeah.
I was one of those people in the street,
Vaccine
Austin.
deniers. There it is.
Yep, that was me.
There it is. No, see, that says a lot.
Denying the science, apparently.
He doesn't share his mangoes. He doesn't take the vaccine. Kind of tells you a lot about a guy. I'm just saying.
That's right.
That's right.
I didn't buy that. I didn't.
You and RFK Jr.
Yeah, I didn't take it.
Didn't take it, huh?
No.
All right.
We can have a conversation about that one day, but no, I didn't take
not.
it. Yeah.
I'll pass.
I know what administration you were a part of, Austin.
That's right. That's right.
The stay-at-home.
The stay-at-home
administration.
Save Lives administration.
Keep us safe, right?
That's right. And not a single life was lost under my watch. That's why I sleep good at night.
Yeah. So I didn't take it, but I was actually I suspect something happened, and the reason is because I remember at one point in time I woke up one day and it was like, God, I feel dizzy, and it was like this was not a normal dizziness, right?
Yep.
And it's like I got to sit down.
Should have took that vaccine.
Hey, quiet! I'm talking here.
Listen to that government. They would try to help you.
The old back government. Listen to me.
Listen to that word.
And so I was like very dizzy, and I kind of sat down. I said, "This is not feel normal. I need to call the doctor." I wasn't even thinking about COVID actually, but it lasted for about an hour, and then it went away. And I just said, "I doubt that was COVID. If it was, then definitely nothing to worry about."
I just sat up too quickly. That's what it was.
No, I know it. No, it wasn't a normal dizzy. I can tell you that.
Okay.
It definitely wasn't a normal dizzy. I've kind of done dizzy.
You kind of done dizzy.
I've done liquid dizzies. I've done, roundabout dizzies. I've done a lot of dizzies.
All right.
That was a different dizzy.
That was a different dizzy. Okay.
But it didn't last very long, and I said, well, I don't know if that was COVID, but if that was it, not really worth it. Nothing to make a big deal about.
No? All right. Well, historically, back to NB181, the Cayman Islands has experienced introductions of variants of COVID, such as Delta and Omicron, often linked to international travel, given Cayman's status as a tourism destination. However, the variant has already been detected in international travelers arriving at airports in California, Washington, Virginia, and New York City. But the good news is no appearance here in the Cayman Islands. Again, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Gent, stressed that the current COVID-19 vaccines are still expected to provide protection against both symptomatic and severe diseases from this variant and, of course, the original strain of COVID-19. So the good news is that your health officials are aware of it. They are monitoring it. And again, according to the Global Health Watchdog, which has also been watered down, at least in terms of its capital financing and maybe even human capital under the new president, the World Health Organization is also advising that the risk of severity of this new NB181 variant is not severe at all, certainly no more than the original. So that's your start off good news. Just again reminding you, whilst it has been a few years, COVID is still out there, but thankfully it's not the global pandemic stressor it once upon a time was. In other good news, this is where we get to congratulate and throw some flowers to fellow Caymanians for their upward mobility. Again, we see and can celebrate this from within the walls of government. Mr. Wilbur Welcome, who was previously the Deputy Chief Officer in the Ministry of District Administration, has now taken up the top job as the Director of the Department of Agriculture, replacing our good friend, Mr. Brian Critchlow, who arguably has held on to that director post as long as I can remember. And doing a good job, I might add. I won't say a wry word about Mr. Brian. Again, in a previous life of ours, he used to be a regular guest, a regular, how shall we say, in-studio expert when it came down to agricultural matters. And I'm sure that Mr. Wilbur Welcome will go on to be just the same. According to a press release regarding the appointment, Wilbur Welcome brings a strong track record of excellence in public service, leadership, and a passion for agricultural development, and he is well positioned to lead the department through its next phase of growth and modernization. Now, I don't know who wrote the press release, but I'm sure Mr. Eric Bush may have had a hand in it. And certainly we want to congratulate Mr. Wilbur Welcome for continuing his upward rise within the ranks of the civil service. Certainly I think he will do just a fine job in this new role, as he has done in just about every other role he has been responsible for. Ellio?
Well, I just definitely want to say the same thing. I can't say I know very much about the gentleman, but I'm happy to see the Caymanians there and giving him, wishing him all the best of luck.
Yes.
And he comes from he's big chains, big feet to follow in, if you like. I remember I was a young man in computer services at the time. We were hooking up agriculture. Where was that? It used to be somewhere along the waterfront there, but it was started off there with Dr. Benjamin.
Yes.
And then, to the best of my knowledge, we went on to Mr. Estwick, or Dr. Estwick. And then we had Mr. Robert Critchlow, right?
Brian.
Is it Brian?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I keep getting it wrong.
That's okay.
And yes, to your point, he used to come on the program quite a bit. I love the Barbadian accent. And go blind, man. I tell you, man, you paint the bottom of the car black, your ass, so man, paint the car brown, dang. But anyway, he used to come on the program.
That's one accent I cannot.
Oh, man, I love it. I love it.
I love it, too.
They can threaten my life, and I'm laughing.
It is unique.
My Ellio, man, listen to me, man. You got to, I might get ignorant real quick, dang. It's like, I had a friend of mine in college.
Very good.
I had a friend in college. I said, listen, I have a butcher knife, man. Listen, you guys might get ignorant real quick. You get ignorant real quick? Me too. So either way, then you had Mr. Brian Critchlow, and then obviously now we have this young Caymanian. So the first one, as in an original seed, if you like, organic seed of the land.
Yes.
It's good to see him there, and I'm wishing him all the best of luck.
Yes, no, absolutely. Congratulations, Mr. Welcome. Again, unlike my colleague, I have had some experience working with Mr. Welcome. He was Deputy Chief Officer during my administration. Though he says the last time he was at the Ministry of District Administration, I remember him as Deputy Chief Officer for Education. So he may have had that role as well and continued to move up the ranks. Or, of course, as we see from one administration to the next, you oftentimes see ministries combined, and district administration makes sense because it's obviously a Cayman Brac function. The last premier was the Honorable Juliana O'Connor Connolly, who is also the long-serving post holder as Minister of Education. So it would make sense that whether or not district administration was added to education, it could have occurred under the last administration. Admittedly, I was not tracking those changes under the last administration. I was preoccupied with tracking, well, who is crossing the aisle this week? Because there were a number of crossing the aisle and number of changes in ministries.
Chairs.
Musical chairs, quite right. Quite right. There was a lot of that going on the last administration, so you will forgive me and understand why perhaps I wasn't keeping up with the civil service, because the government clearly had us on our toes last administration. And last but not least, at 50 minutes, giving us about 9 minutes before we have to pause, in other good news, we also see a news item that contains the name Heyman Rankin. Now, for those of you who might say, why is that name familiar? Well, Mr. Heyman Rankin was a political candidate in the not too distant, long ago, long past political election we just had there on April 30th. He was, if I remember correctly, a member of the Cayman Islands National Party, who we had as our guest in studios. Yes, quite right. Well, he is being quoted in a news headline item that that has the title "Cryptocurrency Taking Off in Cayman for Aircraft and House Sales." It reads, "Payments in cryptocurrencies through Cayman-based businesses are becoming more common and increasingly used in high-value transactions," experts have said. The news came after Cayman-registered Coin Payments teamed up with U.S.-based Jetcraft, a specialist in business jet sales, purchases, and trades, to use a blockchain-based collaboration for cryptocurrency transactions by clients of the aircraft firm. Basically, somebody bought an aircraft and arguably also, as the headline suggests, bought a house using digital currency of cryptocurrency as opposed to the traditional form of currency that we like to jingle in our pockets. Heyman Rankin is quoted in the article as being Cayman Finance's Associate Director for FinTech and the virtual currency sector, and he told The Compass, and I quote, "Blockchain technology continues to reshape industries around the world, and the partnership between Coin Payments and Jetcraft to enable crypto payments in private aviation is a clear example of that shift in action. Coin Payments, a Cayman-exempted company, is one of many Cayman fintech success stories that show just how our jurisdiction continues to serve as a launchpad for globally minded technology firms." Adding, as more sectors embrace this transformation, Cayman is well positioned to continue playing a key role in the emerging virtual asset economy. So again, we like innovation. We like it when Cayman leads from the front. And this is another such opportunity, albeit in cryptocurrency. Now, some people will ask, well, that's all well and good, but what exactly is cryptocurrency? I think as short as I can make it, it's digital currency. Instead of the physical cash that we have in our pockets, it is a tradable asset in the form of money, but it is digital. It is a virtual currency that is verified and recorded using something called blockchain technology. And naturally, you might ask, well, so what is blockchain technology? Well, I guess the simplest definition for blockchain is it's a database. It is a ledger that is used to track transactions. It's been used to, for voting systems. It's been used for medical records, and certainly it is key as a partner between the use of virtual digital assets such as cryptocurrency. Crypto is a form of digital payment, and when combined with blockchain, it can be used to make purchases. Normally, it is used to make online purchases, which is, I think, where it got its rise from, because it provides that secure method of paying for purchases online without running the risk of, well, will my credit card or my debit card or otherwise be hacked or, robbed? So cryptocurrency first started as an online payment transaction, but since then, it has certainly taken the world by storm. And now, of course, it's being used to purchase actual physical assets. This is, I guess, the term you would understand. Cryptocurrency and blockchain, when worked together, are a peer-to-peer digital currency access system. And what does that mean? Well, peer-to-peer is what we use on WhatsApp, for example, when one computer talks to another computer, allowing that sort of secure transaction that, of course, provides the privacy aspect that many clients like. Now, one of the attractions of cryptocurrency, and in particular its growth, has been, we talk about this all the time, first of all, it removes the bureaucracy that comes with the traditional opening up a bank account. You don't have to go through that whole giving your arm, a leg, and firstborn child in order just to open an account. The application process is simple. It is viewed as secure, and it is also removed from the centralized nature of financial transactions. Cryptocurrency doesn't sit at a central bank, but it's a decentralized nature, again, tied to blockchain, which again is a digital recorder or database that tends to track those transactions. Now, because it's new and because it's a digital transaction, because it's largely anonymous, it has also become a favorite among scammers. And people listening certainly may remember some of the big names. I think going back to 2023, there was the OneCoin pyramid scam in the U.S. 2023, which duped unsuspecting users of large amounts of money. Somewhere in the region of $4 billion were hacked. But like everything else, if the marketing promises you a lucrative get-rich-quick scheme.
What was that scam? Was that trying to get people to invest in the crypto thing?
That is correct.
Oh, okay.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And it was a Ponzi scheme, so how it would operate was it would use my money to pay the returns on your money.
That's a price.
And then continue on up the ladder. Kind of, what was the guy that sort of brought Ponzi scheme?
The Madoff guy?
The Madoff guy, yes. Thank you. That's exactly who I was thinking. He put the word Ponzi in the forward-facing headline, so we knew what a Ponzi scheme actually was. But yes, thank you. Bernie Madoff was the guy that, of course, made Ponzi sort of, front and center. But again, we've seen some Ponzi schemes in cryptocurrency. Apparently, according to Google, which I had to search this evening, there have been an increase of some 900% in cryptocurrency scams since COVID-19. But we mentioned COVID because certainly with that global pandemic and global shutdown, we couldn't go to the store and purchase items. We had to do it all online. So that's where cryptocurrency really sort of took its rise, if you will, and saw much success. But like all good things, there's always some scammer somewhere trying to say, you know what, how can I take advantage of this and get rich quick myself? Well, there have been those instances as well.
So, the amazing thing about technology, right, is that I remember I studied electronic engineering. So first of all, you learn, you sit at your calculator and you're pressing all these buttons and the numbers. But the important thing to know, I got 1 minute left?
Well,
You're warning me?
Keep going.
Okay. But the thing to understand is that, of course, in digital world, everything's in ones and zeros. And did you know that you don't actually minus, multiply, or divide? All they actually do is always add. It's just depending how you shift the register of zeros and ones that forces it to either be subtracting, multiplying, or dividing.
I did not know that.
And then I could tell you how that ends up, that you can rebuild a drive, and therefore we end up with things like blockchain.
All right.
But yeah, interesting technology.
Very interesting. And again, came in at the forefront of that. So that wraps up our good news category for today. At 59 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock, we're going to pause, take a short commercial break. Check in with the news brought to you by our news partner, BBC. But there'll be more Straight Talk coming up next on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey
a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News.
The world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to top shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The United States has vetoed a UN Security Council draft resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The other 14 members voted in favour of the document, which also demanded the release of all hostages and the lifting of humanitarian aid restrictions. Our correspondent in New York, John Sodworth, said the outcome of the vote wasn't a surprise.
The US and other members of the Security Council had been briefing widely that, that veto was going to be wielded. But what I think it shows is this deepening divide. You've got America on the one hand suggesting that this resolution was in some ways a reward for terror had it been passed. And you've got others like the UK ambassador here now using words like intolerable to describe the situation in Gaza and describing the killings of Palestinians in recent days around those aid points as inhumane.
The Israeli government says the country's defence exports rose to a record $14 billion last year, despite international criticism of the war in Gaza. More than half of the arms sales went to European countries, even though some of the region's biggest economies have restricted their own arms sales to Israel in protest over its actions in Gaza. Donald Trump says President Putin told him over the phone that Moscow would seek revenge after Ukraine hit Russian bombers at the weekend. An unnamed senior NATO official said more than 40 Russian planes were damaged or destroyed in the attack. Our correspondent Nomia Iqbal is in Washington.
It was really interesting the way Donald Trump talked about the conversation. It was as if it was a fait accompli. President Putin has to respond. That's what he's planning to do. He didn't say if he had tried to persuade him not to do that. It just seems to be now that the president who had promised to end the war on day one of entering office now appears to be a bystander in this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, that he's realised it's not so easy. Instead, he's now almost, dare I say, reduced to kind of relaying to us what the other side is saying.
Students at the Havana University have begun boycotting classes in protest against sharp increases on mobile internet fees. They've also complained that top-up fees would have to be paid in US dollars. Our America's regional editor Leonardo Rocha reports.
In a rare protest against Cuba's communist government, the Students' Union called for a total boycott of classes until the situation is addressed. The state telecom company ETEXA announced last week that tariffs would increase more than tenfold for those who exceed their monthly data limits. The Students' Union said the new prices would be too expensive for most Cubans. The top-up package for those using more than 6 gigabytes of data per month now costs $25, which is half of Cuba's average monthly salary.
BBC News. 6 men have gone on trial in London accused of an arson attack on a business that was helping Ukraine's war effort. 2 have already admitted being hired by Russia's Wagner Group to carry out the attack, which prosecutors say they live-streamed on FaceTime and then boasted about afterwards. The court was told that the industrial unit they targeted manufactured communication equipment and that the gang was planning other attacks. Officials in the Indian city of Bengaluru say 11 people have been killed and more than 30 injured in a crush outside the city's main cricket stadium. Thousands of fans had packed the streets to celebrate the first ever Indian Premier League title for the Royal Challengers Bengaluru. Police say people were trampled and crushed when crowds tried to push through the small gate to get into the stadium. Shoes and broken sandals littered the streets, indicating the extent of the resulting panic. 3 bombs dating back to the Second World War have been successfully defused in the German city of Cologne. They were discovered during building work close to the River Rhine, forcing more than 20,000 people to be evacuated. Trains and road traffic were diverted and businesses closed. A spokesperson for the city said the operation had to be delayed briefly because a resident refused to evacuate. Astronomers say they found a big new planet which unusually is orbiting round a very small star. The discovery upends conventional wisdom about planetary systems and how planets are formed. Dr. Edward Bryant from the University of Warwick in the UK made the discovery.
The planet itself is similar in size to Saturn. It's about the same diameter as Saturn and about half its mass. The star the planet orbits is just 20% the mass of the Sun. And because the star is so small, we wouldn't have expected a planet this large to have been able to form. So the fact that we've discovered it is very exciting.
That's the latest world news from the BBC.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcast live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with your hosts, Ellio Solomon and myself, Austin Harris. The phone lines are open on this Open Mic Wednesday. The number to call, 745-2626, if you want to reach out to us and maybe throw a conversation topic at us, something that's been on your mind that you just need to get off your chest, or if you have a comment or a question on one of our ongoing topics, then by all means, the phone lines are open to you. You can also take advantage, as I like to say, of our version of the 1-800 line. You don't necessarily have to pay for it. You just need a Wi-Fi account. And you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And from there, you can either share a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. We also have the traditional email option, which nobody surprisingly seems to use anymore, but I'm going to give it anyway. host@straighttalk.ky is that address. Yeah, so there you go.
Now, I can see someone just saying, just screw with these guys.
Let me send them some emails.
Sends tons of spam.
You said you missed it. You didn't have any. Now there you go. Be careful what you wish for. That's a very good point. You were explaining the zeros and ones to computers before.
Well, yeah,
was
you know, there's.
You want to?
Yeah, I'm going to say something more about that, and then I also want to, give you some flowers while you're still alive and sitting here with me, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just
to make up for that bucket of mangoes you didn't bring for me, right? I got you. I understand. Guilty conscience. That works.
No.
Go ahead. Floor's yours.
No.
You were saying?
No, I just want to give a genuine compliment.
Waiting.
But okay, the genuine compliment is that, even though I had my own theories and ideas about this whole COVID, stuff, right? But I do want to thank you and your administration for what you did during COVID, because I think, I remember reading it many years ago. Don't ask me where I read it. But it said something to the effect that a genius is someone who sees something that no one else sees, shoots at it, and hits it. Now, if you really sit and think about that, it could mean that a genius really just looks like a madman, because no one's seeing what you're seeing. You shoot at something. Apparently you hit it, but again, I didn't see it because I didn't see it.
Right.
So sometimes there's that difficulty in terms of being able to really find the distinction with the difference between this madman and a genius. But for what it's worth, where I had, and many of us had, and we had our own resistance, I was clearly against being mandated to be pushed down and take some kind of shots, and I still have and share a lot of those views. But it doesn't negate or remove the fact that yourself and your administration had to take it as serious as it is. I mean, you had no time for all that nonsense of speculating, and, you know, you were under the fire, and you had to respond. And I think we all owe your administration a debt of gratitude in terms of the things that you've done, because maybe you didn't have to do that and nothing would have happened, but that's not something we could have played with. You had to do what you had to do. And again, I really think it is something that the country really needs to sit back, analyze it properly, and see what we can learn from COVID. I mentioned a few days ago.
Well, before you move on, let me just say thank you for that very
welcome.
kind compliment. And I certainly wouldn't call us experts at the time. COVID took us by surprise, as it did the rest of the world, and we just simply trusted the available science at the time and then took the precautions, to your point, that we felt were necessary to protect lives,
absolutely,
both Caymanians and residents. And, you know, and we weren't always a fan favorite for some of those choices, but I will give credit and kudos to Sir Alden, who was the premier at the time. He was obviously the public face of that whole initiative and that, you know, collaborative effort that was a government. And I thought he did a good job at controlling some of the negativity, but I thank you on behalf of that government, which I was proud to be a part of.
No, and I'll continue, because I was going to speak about Sir Alden as well. So again, it's a case that, how do you know that your administration deserves credit? I can tell you very quickly how you know. Because if anything had gone wrong, you would be getting a beating, right? And so if nothing does go wrong, I think just that in itself tells you that things went well, something good happened, and we deserve to take time out to give credit for that. I was going to get on to Sir Alden because I note that there were a lot of things that were done, as we would say, that weren't quite according to what I would have understood to be the process. And one of those was a lot of the things that had taken place, one could argue, could only and should only have occurred in a state of emergency. And I still believe, and if I'm correct, again, I don't beat the leader. In fact, I applaud him, because I'd like to believe that Sir Alden took a position where he tried as much as possible to keep the strength and the power in the elected arm of the government, as opposed to handing it over to the UK. And I think that kind of healthy, as one long friend of ours, he's now passed away, used to say that healthy distaste, if you like, for the British is, I think, is always oftentimes appreciated. But I believe that is what was done. And just that in itself tells you, again, why we need to look at it carefully, because maybe there needs to be an interim step between the normalcy of your administration and before you get to a state of emergency, so that could be perfectly legally employed, where you get a certain level of emergency powers without going far in one direction. But either way, I applaud, again, Sir Alden, all of you guys, everybody played a role, and you would have been suffering if you hadn't in terms of that. And again, in the same vein, let me mention that I think you also did an excellent job, at least as far as I could see from a view. And people don't oftentimes appreciate the politics of it, you see. And one of these days, we need to have the discussion of, I've talked about the victimization that goes on, and I applauded, for example, Minister J. Ebanks with what he has done with Mr. Ezra Miller. And I do that because I have seen, witnessed, and been a victim of victimization, where you have persons that try to employ just the opposite. They try to go out of their way to ensure that you'll never get a job and you can't possibly run the campaign. And I think it even goes even more deeper and more personal than that in some instances. But seeing what Mr. Ebanks has done, I think, for example, is worthy of being mentioned and applauded. And I think I've done a fair share in trying to do that. And I say that even with respect to yourself, a lot of times people don't pay attention to the politics that's happening behind the scenes to give them an appreciation as to how in God's name did Austin not win his seat. Well, I can assure you that when I speak to you about the victimization and the game playing that happens in politics, I know for a fact that that's one of the reasons why you're not there. But nevertheless, congratulations. You did a good job. Now on to the
Well, on that point, I also ask myself the same question: why Ellio Solomon didn't get reelected? Because certainly, from a standpoint of proposing, individual private members' motions and recommendations, the jobs for Caymanians only was just one in a long line of what I thought was out of the box thinking. And I too was surprised, but thank you very much for those comments.
More than welcome.
And I will certainly say I would not go so far as to consider myself or our government experts on anything that we did, because certainly the COVID decision making arguably, had its pros and cons. We weren't popular on every demographic, but we satisfied ourselves with the notion like our purpose here is to save lives.
But
that was the preeminent goal that steered every single decision.
But that's all the more reason why you deserve a credit. And the thing of it is that let's pretend, try to give an analogy. You have a bomb threat. There's a bomb supposedly strapped to the bottom of a boat and it's sitting in Georgetown Harbor. Well, if you have a bomb expert and he's a diver and everything else, well, you're not going to be totally surprised that he dives into the water, goes down there and disarms the bomb.
Right.
Where I think you deserve more credit is you grab some guy off the street. I'm not even sure I'm a good diver, and I don't know anything about bombs. But he's trying his best. He's following instructions. He's working under all of these stresses and still manages to pull it off.
Yeah.
I think that is, in my opinion, worthy of as much kudos, if not more, than the expert.
But I thank you for that. And as far as, apologies go, you are forgiven for not bringing mangoes. You are definitely forgiven when you grovel that way. I'm kidding.
I don't want to dilute my compliment by tying the mangoes into it. It has nothing to do with those mangoes.
I'm sorry. I appreciate it. I'm just kidding. But I thank you
I
very much.
was just so busy enjoying those mangoes that I
Unity government that I was a part of.
Completely forgot about you.
No problem. I thank you.
But on the electronic part, I mean, just on the blockchain argument, I think it's good to share a few tidbits.
Yeah.
One is computers don't really multiply, take away, and divide. They just add. Mm-hmm. So everything is converted into ones and zeros. And again, it's shifting registers. And at the end of the day, by adding, and depending how you shift that, you get the multiplication, division, etc. But with the blockchain, to try to give a simplified example, and I haven't tested this analogy completely, but I'll throw it out. If you've ever played Sudoku, mm-hmm. you'll know that you can figure out what the missing numbers are. And there's no other alternative. There's only one number that can go there.
Right.
And I think the blockchain is a bit like that. And I remember back in the years ago when I used to work with computer services, for example, it started off where we got these mini mainframe computers and you had like 5 drives. And basically, if you lost the information in drive number 3, because there was a computation going on, it actually mean that if that drive number 3 got bad, you could pull it out and push another one in, and it could rebuild the information. Because first of all, it's just ones and zeros.
Right.
And if you use the Sudoku example of what I've just given you, where you've got the other 4 pieces out of the 5 for the Sudoku, so it knows what has to go in that 3rd drive.
Right.
And it rebuilds it.
Understood.
And the blockchain is a bit like that, because you've got all these computers, despite the fact that they're out and decentralized, they're all linked together on that ledger that you talk about, mm-hmm. as part of that little 5 drives, if you like.
Yes.
And that's how it is. So if you move one, if you could even move one, you couldn't push something that was false in there. Mm-hmm. It still rebuilds it for what it has to be.
Right.
Because the other ones tells it and computes and say, no, it has to be a 7 that goes there, nothing else. Mm-hmm. So if you try putting a 5, there's a fraud. And I just throw that out as an example to help simplify a little bit of what's going on with blockchain. It's some wonderful technology. I am concerned a little bit about the future and where we go with all the cashless society.
Yes.
I don't know. It's you see. I heard something on the news. It might have been today. I was listening attentively. But it is such an easy way to abuse the system where you can actually. I mean, I've had challenges right now going and trying to get my cash out of the bank. Because of some nonsense. For example, of proof of what is it called?
Source of funds.
Source of funds. Thank you. And it's like you sit there and you say, hold on a second. This doesn't make any sense what you're saying to me, because
it was fine when I was depositing it.
The source of funds, I definitely see the need for the source of funds when I was depositing it. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to take it back out now.
Yeah.
And you get all of
can't have
these.
it.
Yeah. And as you get onto the whole electronic thing, it's just going to be so much easier for people to just shut you off, to just completely cut you out of society.
Yeah. No,
Pick a clock overnight.
I agree with you, man. The digital currency, whilst I understand it, I guess to the point that I could explain it in simple terms, I, for one, have not, developed the courage to try it out because, like you, I like, having a bank account. I like, watching my account grow whenever possible. I like visiting my money. But more importantly, I like knowing that I can go and take it out whenever I want to. The tangibility of it is obviously, and accessibility to it is my number one goal when dealing with the traditional financial transaction. But to your point, there's enough anxiety attached to that with bank charges and bank policies and bank fees to send you really, over the moon on. I can't imagine, adding to it with a digital currency that you really can't touch, you really can't visit, you're just trusting that it's there, you're trusting that it's growing, and you're trusting you can get it back.
You can visit it. You won't be feeling it in your hands, but you can visit it and see it online. And
there'll be no jingle in one's hand, And I like the jingle. You forgive me, but that's just how it is.
That reminds me of the one of the movies with the guy on there said we like the one that jingles, but we prefer the one that folds.
That we do, indeed.
Oh Lord,
a little bit of cash in my pocket.
Yeah, like the cash.
Well, I feel kind of guilty now. I mean, you just really ruled out the compliments as it relates to the Unity Coalition government, which I was a part of, and obviously the job that we did on managing the COVID pandemic, of which you handed out flowers to me personally and to my colleagues, which I do appreciate it. And I feel sort of like a Judas now when I want to raise a certain topic that we oftentimes say Ellio is trying to avoid. Ellio has tried to get out of it, but like a good episode from The Sopranos, or better yet, The Godfather, I tried to get out, but he pulled me back in again. There was an article in, I think, yesterday's headlines, it may have been Monday's, where it said, cruise numbers plummet while Cayman's air arrivals continue to grow. Yeah. And I thought it was important to raise it because, again, one of the fears that were expressed by those persons, you and I and others, who were pro-cruise infrastructure investment was that if we don't do this, we might very well end up pushing ourselves out of the cruise economy altogether. Not only would that affect government revenues, but largely and perhaps even more importantly, it would impact the fortunes or the ability for a number of persons, forget fortune, just the ability for a number of persons to survive day to day in Cayman because they are in that sector. So the article says, although air arrivals in Grand Cayman remain strong in April, surpassing the previous year's monthly total for the fifth consecutive month, cruise arrivals plummeted by 26.6% compared to the same period in 2024. Excluding 2020 through 2022, the 3 years heavily impacted by COVID-19, the total of 83,933 cruise passenger arrivals during this month represented the lowest totals for April since the Department of Tourism started keeping statistics in 2000. I want that to settle in there for a second. 83,000 represents the lowest amount of cruise passengers to enter the Cayman Islands in the last almost 25 years. That is something significant, and I wish I had some more good news to give you, but I don't. It's going to get worse. Those numbers are going to continue to plummet. We've talked about it before. Cayman used to be in the top 3, if not the top 5 of cruise destinations with 1 million, 1.1, and I think 1.2 million was our top number, which put us behind places like Bahamas, which has almost every island has a pier. We at the time had no piers, but we were still very popular for cruise ship passengers and cruise lines. But once they started down the line of these mega ships, the Icon class and, a few others whose names I'm not quite familiar with, but maybe my colleague is. But once that development started happening, we were told by the cruise lines themselves that these ships will not tender. And it's not because they couldn't tender, but in some cases it was, because, of course, the water line between where a tender would go and where a ship's door or disembarkation point would be necessarily much higher on a bigger ship. But the notion was that because the ship contained so many passengers, upwards of 7,500 on some ships, it would take literally all day long to embark and disembark those passengers, thereby cutting the shore time down to almost non-existent. It would make more sense to simply keep sailing the routes than it would be to try to, share that business with some of the Caribbean destinations that they went into. But despite the steep fall off in April from the 114,000 cruise passengers that arrived in 2024, the total number of cruise visitors for the first 4 months of 2025 is still 4% more than the same period in 2024. Again, we're clinging on to a dream, a pipe dream that is not going to be around for a long time. Elsewhere in the region, Jamaica also has experienced a significant decline in cruise arrivals, but the decrease in cruise in Grand Cayman was partially offset by a 15% increase in stayover arrivals compared to the same month last year. For this year, air arrivals are up 7.4% over the first 4 months of 2024 and on trajectory to come close to a record-setting 500 and whopping 2,739 visitors for the whole of 2019. So again, we see this goal, this target for stayover to surpass 500,000 in the 40-plus years that we've been recording air arrivals. We rarely break 500,000. And though some government politicians have stated that, and I think it is even a written targeted goal that by 2030, 2035, we're going to somehow magically double that figure to 1 million stayover visitors. Again, we struggle to get 2,000 more stayover visitors. I don't see how we're going to double it in 10 years. But hey, what is definite is that we're seeing a spill-off on the cruise side, whilst we're also seeing a slow, gradual increase on the air side. But when you track the trends as to where these new numbers are coming from, they still dominantly are coming from the U.S. market. They're not coming from the European market, as some have suggested, which is, of course, the support, for lack of a better word, the reasoning persons are using for extending the runway and expanding the terminal facilities to incur larger aircraft, longer haul aircraft to expand our markets in Europe and Central and South America. But so far, we still see the lion's share of increases in our tourism stayover market still coming from the United States. But I just want to throw that out there, and it's an opportunity to give evidence to some of the fears that were being expressed during the cruise referendum subject. Many considered it fear-mongering. Well, whether it was fear-mongering then or not, it is evidence now by actual reduction in those numbers. And as we've talked about more than once this month, the month of June are going to see 12, maybe 13 cruise arrivals for the entire month, which is a significant decline as well. That is expected to continue to fall as we get further on in the year.
And I think to that point, I think the sad reality of the situation is we're only just beginning. We're still somewhat at though a lower mountain, we're still at some bit of a mound, and we're on our way down. But I think unfortunately next year is going to be worse, and there is no doubt in my mind that we have to understand that these are corporations, but behind those corporations are human beings, and I think that they have seen and heard what the Caymanian people have said loud and clear. Just to use their words, it has been quoted. They've heard it loud and clear. Mm-hmm. And I think that they will walk away from this saying that we don't think that the Caymanian people are interested really in cruise. Because as you mentioned with the airlines, so it is with the cruise. In relation, for example, to the airlines, it is... Got a caller?
15 seconds. Can I
sure.
Stick a pin right there for a moment? At 29 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock, we have to pause, take a very short commercial break, but keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk coming up next on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
The Cayman Turtle Center's Turtle Crawl 5K is back Sunday, June 8th, starting from the Cayman Turtle Center at 6:30 a.m. Registration is 25 CI and includes a race shirt and a goodie bag. All funds raised will support conservation of green sea turtles in the Cayman Islands. Corporate discounts are available by emailing info@turtle.ky. Register now for the Turtle Crawl 5K at turtlecrawl.ky. Proudly sponsored by Advanced Fire, Corporate Electric, CG Brit K, Yanni's Photography, and Oasis Medical Group.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. The phone lines are open and remain open all the way until 6:30 at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. Prior to the break, obviously, we're taking a look at the tourism figures for the quarter or the first quarter of 2025, as well as the year-to-year numbers compared to last year, where we saw a decline, the lowest recorded number of cruise arrivals in the month of April since we started recording those numbers over a 25-year period. However, the year-to-year analysis shows cruise lines or cruise business still up by a small margin of 4%, whereas stayover visitors are quickly approaching, if not already approaching, record levels with a 15% increase in stayovers as compared to the same first 3 or 4 months of the year as was recorded last year. So on the one hand, very good for stayover numbers. On the other hand, I think more proof positive that the fears that were expressed in cruise tourism are starting to play out in reality. Ellio, you were beginning to comment on this before the break interrupted you.
No, that's fine. So, again, I see it as a situation where I think the numbers will unfortunately only get worse as we get into next year. And again, this is the time that things starts to get a little bit slow. You know, this is where we have all the Pirates Week and all sorts of things that eventually come up again generally to try to bolster and boost the tourism industry. And the numbers are very slow. I mean, you talked about it. We've all talked about it, where even in 1 week, you'll see one ship. And this is a country where you were getting 4, 5, 6, and maybe even more ships just in one single day.
Yeah.
And as I've said, there are human beings behind those institutions, and it is very difficult. They have made those expressions in the international media that the message from Cayman Islands is loud and clear.
Yes.
And I think many of them are going to take the position and start to remove. I know they already have. I think it was 2 ships already, or two liners that have already started removing ships from the Cayman.
Really?
Yeah.
They've started to actively remove Cayman as part of their itinerary.
As part of the route.
Wow.
So you're going to get a lot of that, because clearly they're going to take the position that Cayman doesn't want to cruise.
Yes.
And again, from the referendum, if there was any doubt in their minds, then I think that the referendum sends a very loud message from the people of this country. I know, Sun Tzu, I think in The Art of War, if I have the pronunciation correct, says that we should build a golden bridge upon which our opponents, put it nicely, can retreat.
Yes.
And I wish to build that golden bridge as well and say that I think that hopefully it's a case that if you can't see the light, you can feel the heat. And when we feel the heat a little bit, that, we as a country, we as a people will do the right thing. But I can guarantee you, even with respect to this summer here, there are going to be a lot of businesses that simply, especially those who are completely solely dependent on cruise, are probably not going to survive.
Well, one contributor on WhatsApp agrees with you. It says, I've been looking at cruise numbers over the summer, And nobody who depends solely on the cruise business is likely to survive the off-season unscathed. There are 8 days in the month of June where no ships, zero, will come into the Cayman Islands. These numbers are entirely too small to sustain most of those businesses through the summer, which, as we all know, is when for one example, our utility prices start to go up because it's getting hotter. ACs are getting used more often. You can guarantee, almost like you can,
your bills are up.
The sun rising tomorrow morning, that your utility bills are going to increase. And with the utility bills increasing, so too does every other bill, because obviously companies have to, the
bills
compensate for that increase and increase
bills
their
are up,
own
revenues
costs.
down.
You're absolutely right. So these are the real world challenges. And again, I just pointed out because it was, again, called fear-mongering a few months ago.
Yeah.
But now the facts are starting to play it out.
And we'll have to make some serious reforms. Again, I mentioned as having been someone as the chairman for the Turtle Center, that almost 60% of the revenues for the Turtle Center comes from cruise. I mentioned this throughout the campaign.
Yeah.
And if you look just at that institution, and why I think that is important is because without giving out exact figures, you're talking large amounts, millions of dollars is given by the taxpayer, you guys that are paying at the pump and at the grocery stores, paying taxes, significant amounts of money. The 5, the 6, the 7, the 8, the 9 millions of dollars that goes to the Turtle Center alone to be able to keep that facility working. And to know that what is being supplemented to keep the cost down is the fact that they are getting money from cruise, arguably 60%. Well, that number was down already to about 30%. And again, you're seeing further decreases. So there's no way that institution is going to be able to continue to function in the way that it was before, unless some serious reform is actually made. Government, as in the taxpayers, will either have to push out even more money, right? And or in addition to that, it has to be other changes that are being made to cut costs, etc.
Yeah.
So, but I believe that when the casualties of this war starts to come in, I believe that the minister and other members of the government will have to act, and they're going to get very quickly to a crossroads, I believe, where they have to say, because potentially, I wanted to stress again, you're talking about government revenues as a whole getting $40 to $50 million in revenues to the government from cruise.
Yep.
So when somebody tells you it's down 45% or it's down 26%, do the math. And you ask yourself, well, where is these 10, 50, 20, $25 million going to come from? This is real money.
Yes, it is.
And it's one thing to say, oh, we don't want that. Lick your finger and put it in the air. I don't want that. But you need to also be able to answer the other question. You don't want that, but where are you going to find that 25 million? Or where are you going to find that 30, 40, or 50 million? Because if you can't, and not only are you going to have reducing revenues, as you've highlighted, you're going to get the increasing bills in this particular case. And as a person who served in the government, you would know well that when the numbers are going down in terms of your revenues, at the same time, there are more hands knocking on the doors of NAU and Department of Children and Family Services, whatever it is you have out there, saying, I have no money.
Yes.
And you need to take care of me.
Yes.
So for the ones then who are working, well, that's where you're going to have to go deeper into your pockets to feed them.
Yeah. No,
and you're already seeing the increase in crime, and I don't want to tie it directly to cruise, but, at some point, it's going to become evident. You had 2 robberies in one day.
Yep.
And, again, like I said, I think one of the problems that we have in this country at this point in time is that you have Caymanians that are rightly upset about a myriad of different things. And you have another group of people that have come here, and as I have stressed, they're among us. They have papers. But they're not necessarily, in my opinion, for us, because they have their own agenda, and their agenda is to be able to make it their retirement home, their own private island. But unfortunately, one of the things that has happened is because their agenda seems on the surface to fit the agenda of many Caymanians, in the sense that many Caymanians feel like the development is not working for them. They don't feel they're benefiting from it. And so many have somewhat blindly went ahead with these persons on their agenda and have really cut off their nose to spite their face.
Yeah.
But I want to encourage every Caymanian that what we need to do is, as we have highlighted just yesterday, we need to make evidence-based decisions. We need to be properly informed so that we can make the right decision. And I hope that when we start to see the casualties, that it wouldn't be a case that anybody's digging their heels in, but that what we are doing is being able to say, no, we need to change this. And I encourage persons to look at it objectively, that we need that infrastructure. As I've said before, I'm here. Persons can call me. I'm on the air. I'm not telling any lies. I can tell you that you have been sold a lot of lies in terms of what is going to happen downtown Georgetown, and I stand by that position. If it takes 10, 15, or another 13 years to prove that I'm right, then I'll sit and wait 13 years. Yeah. Come and get me. Worst case, I'll be on the farm. But I think we need airport infrastructure because we need to be able to diversify this country. You need to be able to have the options of simply being able to say that we are not solely dependent on the United States. I pray that I mentioned on one of the chats that I was on, let's understand that a strong America is good for Cayman. Mm-hmm. But we have to also be building our own ship in a way that we have to say, what if America is not strong tomorrow? Do we have another option? And that's what we have to do with our tourism product. That's the same thing we have to be doing in terms of our financial services. We need further diversification. So let's sit, let's watch the numbers, let's watch what happens in the economy, let's watch what happens with the crime, and hopefully we can all start to whisper to the minister that, listen, forget about the referendum, we need to move forward and we need to build something. Because, and let me make sure and state, I'm not knocking the minister at all. The minister has come in now. It's no fault of his what has happened in terms of the referendum. It is no fault of his what is going to occur. Not his fault. But it'll be very quickly that they'll want to blame him because that's how we are, right? It was not my fault. It's your fault. You're the minister. Do something. And I will only encourage the minister and encourage us, first of all, to not blame the present minister because it's not his fault. It's something he has inherited. But I want to encourage him to look at the situation very objectively, see what is happening, crime, see what is happening in terms of people knocking on the NAU doors and the family services and all of the other social services that we have. Look at the declining numbers and be ready to make that leadership and that judicious decision because it is going to have to be made very, very soon. And for those of us in the public who take one position, either the 30% or the 70%, who have been so smart that we're willing to change our minds, to take the time to text the minister, phone the minister, and let him know that he has the public support to do what has to be done. Because it is going, in my humble opinion, I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to get to that critical point. And not just because of cruise, there's a myriad of different things that's already occurring in the country to almost create a little bit of a perfect storm in terms of what's going to happen to the economy. And we're hoping that we don't have any much issues with what was it that was passed in February 28th, the beneficial ownership. There's a lot of things lurking. And we've had Mr. Travers come on the program and say, let's not look at your financial services and think that it's all perfectly rosy.
Yeah.
If it was a human being, we would say the arteries are very quickly constricting. And if we don't do something about it, you're going to have a heart attack. So with that, I pause, I yield.
Well, I want to thank you again because I think you made a number of key and very important observations. If I can just use your terminology of the casualties of the decision to not build cruise infrastructure arguably extends itself way past just those companies that are directly involved in cruise business. I would say arguably there are a number of tourist-related businesses that depend heavily on both sectors, both cruise numbers and stayovers in order to keep their lights on. So it's those businesses, perhaps, that were discounted in the referendum that will also potentially feel the decline in cruise numbers and may very well, in some cases, close their doors. So they may very well become the first casualties of that ongoing economic war, if you will, in terms of cruise versus stayover. But you also made another valuable point that I don't think we can afford to ignore. As cruise visits decline, so too are the revenues that are earned by the government.
Yeah.
When we look at 2023, 2024, the country was earning in the region of $305, $308 million a year indirect revenue. You say that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. 500 plus million a year was what we were earning in cruise passenger fees prior to COVID. But now we can expect those revenue totals to continue to go down. And how does that impact life? One of those fantastic ways, as you pointed out, the financial assistance, those persons on NAU. The government has less money in its coffers, but the demands are still high.
Getting higher.
And getting higher in terms of our social welfare systems. Where is that money going to come from? You add to it the businesses and business owners who were quite happily providing for themselves. They were employing persons and therefore providing for their living, now potentially falling off. We saw 40 disappear in the last 4 years alone just in central Georgetown, the capital city. Arguably, some will say it had more to do with the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative than it did the absence of cruise passengers. But we argue they had both to do with it, because certainly the cruise passengers are the ones that provide or create that foot traffic. But either way you slice it, the evidence is playing out before our eyes, and it represents, I think it's a fantastic description, the casualties of this otherwise decision not to focus on cruise as well as focusing on airport infrastructure. I will just simply add that I agree with you, and we've gone on record as stating that we both are on the same page in the need to continue to invest in our tourism infrastructure at the gateway, whether that be cruise or airport. Where I draw a bit of a line on the airport, I'm sure you do as well, as you know, very conscientious when it comes to spending. Why spend more than you need to at one time is a concern. Number two, when we look at the significant costs of these airport expansion plans, if taken in total, it's almost $1 billion that we're going to saddle our own Caymanians. First costs, not to add the financing costs that will, absolutely go with it. So you're looking at $1.5 billion, maybe $1.8 billion before it's all said and done with. That's a project that
if you run forward everything.
If you run forward everything over its lifespan, you can see that that's doubling the country's annual budget just in one sector. And as we said time and time again, these monies are going to have to be borne by the taxpayer and not carried on the back of perhaps one of our tourism partners, as was the case with cruise, that could very well have come at the cost of the cruise lines themselves. So these realities, again, we're not crying over spilt milk. It is what it is. But I will say this. Voters, and I think you agree with me, voters usually don't know what they want until they get it. Mm-hmm. And then when they get it, they perhaps have a different experience all over again. I doubt they'll ever say, well, what was I thinking? Because nobody likes looking at the mirror and blaming themselves. To your point, they'll find somebody else convenient to blame for the outcome. But what was considered fear-mongering, and I just want to state it for the record, is in fact playing out in reality, and that reality impacts human lives.
Real lives.
And we have every reason in the world to be cautious and to be worried about it. One writer says, good evening, Ellio and Austin. This is a tough time for cruise-dependent businesses here in the Cayman Islands. Landlords should be working with tenants, not against them. I encourage tenants to come together and ask for support, write letters, have the conversation. If we don't act now, Georgetown risks becoming a ghost town, and social issues will only get worse. We need solutions, and we need them fast. Maybe you guys can get the Honorable Gary Ruddy on the show to talk about it. Well, two things jump out at me in this case. We talk about the casualties that will come as a result of the cruise downturn, and we think of businesses shuttering their doors, unable to meet their financial obligations, unable to pay salaries. So that means potential more unemployment and layoffs. But the writer points out a very important point here. A lot of people who are in the cruise space or the tourism space don't own the buildings which they occupy. They're paying rent like everybody else is. And in the reality, like we see in the housing market, these renters, the owners, are increasing their rents. They're not going down. So here we have a double whammy, a decrease in revenue from the number of persons arriving via one sector, whilst there are costs or fees associated with simply just doing business continuing to rise. So really the perfect storm.
Well, you're gonna end up with all sorts of things, and this is where the play comes in, right? The reality is, for example, now is that as you get a diminishing market in cruise, you are going to have players now, much probably, well, let's put it this way, keep it civil. You're going to have players that are going to try to see how they can maximize and benefit over those smaller numbers. And I've already heard, where again you're talking about people upping the rent, but at the end of the day, there's an objective to upping the rent, right? There's an objective of getting your business out. I don't want to give examples, but a lot of things become strategic. But let me give you an
cutthroat nature of business,
right? Because if you know now that you used to get 1,000 ships and you're only going to get 400. Well, right away now, people now say, well, how can I try to maximize? And I can take this guy's business over and I can take this one over so I can maximize on the amount of ships that are going to come in. Mm-hmm. And in addition to that, on the rental side, again, many people fail to understand that cruise isn't something that's happening on the waterfront. It's happening all over the country. Everybody's benefiting. There's actual landlords renting apartments that are benefiting from people who are involved in cruise, and the gas stations and the tire shops and the mechanics. Everyone, in other words, gets at least $6 out of that $100 that is spent is coming from cruise, and everybody's going to feel it. And when you get that serious reduction in the economy, then it creates a situation where overall there's no desire for businesses to spend. Nobody wants to hire because everything is going soft in the economy. So I think it's a situation where all we can do at this point in time is continue to watch it, monitor it, and do the best that we can to manage the situation that we have.
Absolutely. To the second point raised by the WhatsApp message, certainly suggesting we get the Honorable Gary Ruddy in our studios. Well, first of all, I know the invitation has been extended. We just haven't obviously received a response yet, and we're not going to be too critical on the government because clearly we understand obviously what's preoccupying their time at present. So they may be forgiven for a period of the first 100 days as we await the strategic policy statement and get some idea what their priorities will be. But yes, on the one hand, we will certainly be extending invitations to persons, ministers like the Honorable Gary Ruddy, to come in the studio and talk to us. But really, if we're having this conversation comprehensively, Mr. Ruddy will only be able to speak on it from a tourism standpoint because we know he's not the Minister for Transport, which traditionally has been tied together, tourism and transport, which included things like the airport, like the cruise port, because of the tourism connectivity. We understand under this new National Coalition for Caymanian administration, the infrastructure aspect of the ports, whether it be airport or seaports, will fall under Minister J.E. Banks, who arguably, last time I checked, has probably one of the busiest ministries. He's got 4, maybe 5 other subjects, plus transport added to it. So he's going to be a busy minister, but I suppose if they didn't have confidence in his abilities, they wouldn't give it to him.
Well, again, and let me just take this opportunity to stress and highlight that I can't claim to know him best, but I definitely know a little bit about Mr. Gary Ruddy, and I have a lot of confidence in him that he's going to be doing the best job that he can. And my confidence will remain until proven otherwise. But I want to make sure and highlight to the public that Mr. Ruddy would have taken office now with a clear mandate, if you want to put it that way. There were persons crying that this referendum can be discarded or whatever because it wasn't legally binding. And I continue to stress it's not legally binding, but it's politically binding. So this government would be going in, if you like, for the want of a better expression, a reverse mandate or a mandate of saying we don't want cruise piers. We don't want cruise tourism almost. And nothing is wrong with him having to go forward with an understanding, at least for now, that the country doesn't want those piers. And that's why I say, as we see, because when we talk, and I use that example about the casualties, because it's one thing when you watch the American situation, it's one thing about learning a new country in the world as we drop bombs and we talk about a new war, but it's totally different when the body bags start coming home. Yeah. And so in this case, when the body bags start coming home, that I hope that all of us can get behind the minister, and he's going to need that with the encouragement of words and emails and texts, letting him know that the public is supportive of him. because he has been clearly told, and this government has been clearly told, and arguably every government of the future has been told, we do not support at all the whole issue about peers.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Any government, but particularly a new administration, following so closely on the heels of that referendum, where, again, the question of cruise infrastructure was unequivocally shot down, saying we don't want it, would be very foolhardy to perhaps bring it, despite what the people, quote unquote, vis-a-vis the voters, have spoken ever so loudly on it. Really, the only minister or MP that might take a different course is one who perhaps, like Mr. Michael Miles and others, who said, listen, this is not about the next election. I'm not worried about the next election. It's, not even on my mind. I'm here to do a job now, and that's the job that I'm going to focus on, which, of course, is the right approach. And I commend anyone who takes on, that belief. But we have also seen in politics where, politicians oftentimes speak out of both sides of their mouth. So it remains to be seen what will be the outcome. But to your point, the government clearly can defend itself by saying we have a mandate not to build cruise infrastructure. That remains to be seen as those numbers continue to plummet, as those revenues continue to decline, both for the country and, again, for key stakeholders, that is citizens, people like you and I, business people who derive a living from cruise tourism, continue to see their fortunes also decline as well. It could mean higher unemployment. It could mean strains on social welfare and financial assistance. It could mean a lot of things. And this, to the writer's point, is why, even more than ever, why we need to hear from our leaders on this point. Don't you worry. We are keeping a list and checking it twice. And certainly we will be asking our ministers and government leaders, when we have the opportunity, these pressing questions and hear
and I know
what
that
they have to say.
I know that the deputy leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan, alluded to the fact that, again, the government may have been going on the other program. Why not here? I don't know of that. If that's happening, I'm not sure why. But I would like to give the government as an open mind and believe that they will eventually come here on the program and share what they have to share with the public. But we will see. Got some text. Immigration reform needed badly. And yes, Ellio, you are right about the cruise tourism. And then the other one is crime. We have got to hold those parents that is not being good parents, hold them for irresponsibility, neglect, and abandonment, juvenile delinquency, and exposing their children to drugs and alcohol. Well, we definitely voted in favor of some drugs and lottery. We'll see what happens. But either way, very interesting discussion, and I can only say we watch, we monitor the situation, and hope that everybody can, as we see the numbers and we see what is happening, if it is as we suspect. Because one thing I believe is, Mr. Harris, when you fight a righteous fight, you don't have to worry, because history will testify on your behalf, and the future will vindicate you. The future will set you free.
No, you're absolutely right. I just have one final point on the whole cruise tourism initiative, and particularly the decline. I can imagine, or I can even hear those persons on the other side, perhaps the 70% who voted against cruise infrastructure, saying, well, we see a decline in cruise ship arrivals every summer. It is par for the course. And that always picks up again in the winter season. Yes, whilst that may be partially true, I would challenge any person who is taking that opinion to show me where the declines, the usual seasonal declines, have been as bad as they are expected to be in this jurisdiction. Again, 12 ships for an entire month, a total of 8 days where there are no ships at all. There are declines, and then there are absolutely definitive, I ain't coming to the Cayman Islands no more type of thing.
Supporting your point. Supporting your point, during the campaign, we said the cruise tourism was down 45%. Again, our numbers went all the way from the 1.2 and whatever million.
15 seconds.
Our 1.9 actually went down to 1,078,000. And now the Compass, who actually said to not vote in favor of peers, is now saying it's down an additional 26%.
Keep it locked. Straight Talk continues next right here on Bobo FM.
Bobo.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News. World news from the BBC.
Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. The United States has vetoed a UN Security Council draft resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. The other 14 members voted in favour of the document, which also demanded the release of all hostages and the lifting of humanitarian aid restrictions. The US ambassador to the UN, Dorothy Shea, said the draft was unbalanced and laid out the US objection to the resolution.
It is unacceptable for what it does say. It is unacceptable for what it does not say. And it is unacceptable for the manner in which it has been advanced. The United States has been clear. We would not support any measure that fails to condemn Hamas and does not call for Hamas to disarm and leave Gaza.
The head of the International Red Cross has said people in Gaza are being stripped entirely of their human dignity. Mirjana Spoljaric told the BBC that failure to act by world leaders would come to haunt them.
It's surpassing any acceptable legal, moral and humane standard. The level of destruction, the level of suffering, but more importantly, the fact that we are watching a people being entirely stripped of its human dignity should really shock our collective conscience.
Earlier, the UN's aid chief, Tom Fletcher, said this week's horrifying scenes of people in Gaza being killed while trying to access food aid was the result of deliberate choices to deprive them. Donald Trump says President Putin told him over the phone that Moscow would seek revenge after Ukraine hit Russian bombers at the weekend. An unnamed senior NATO official said more than 40 Russian planes were damaged or destroyed in the attack. Our chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue, is in Washington.
We've come a long way, haven't we, from the days when Donald Trump said he could end this war in 24 hours. We now hear him talking more about red lines beyond which he will walk away from this conflict. And the difficulty, of course, for Ukraine is if those red lines, once they're crossed, include the ending of military and financial help, then for Kyiv to continue fighting the war would be incredibly hard. It would be catastrophic for that regime. So we don't know precisely where those red lines are, but you do get the sense in which the patience here in Washington is running out.
Donald Trump has said Russia's President Putin has offered to take part in nuclear talks with Iran. The US president made the announcement after accusing Tehran of slow walking on a proposed deal. In a speech on Wednesday, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said his country would not agree to stopping enriching its uranium stocks, a key demand of Mr. Trump. A 6th round of talks between the two sides is expected to take place soon. BBC News. Students at the Havana University have begun boycotting classes in protest against sharp increases on mobile internet fees. They've also complained that top-up fees would have to be paid in US dollars. Our America's regional editor, Leonardo Rocha, reports.
In a rare protest against Cuba's communist government, the Students' Union called for a total boycott of classes until the situation is addressed. The state telecom company ETEXA announced last week that tariffs would increase more than tenfold for those who exceed their monthly data limits. The top-up package for those using more than 6 gigabytes of data per month now costs $25, which is half of Cuba's average monthly salary. President Miguel Diaz-Canel said he was looking into options for the most vulnerable students.
6 men have gone on trial in London accused of an arson attack on a business that was helping Ukraine's war effort. 2 have already admitted being hired for the job by the Russian private military company, the Wagner Group. Prosecutors say the men live-streamed the attack on FaceTime and then boasted about it afterwards. Officials in the Indian city of Bengaluru say 11 people have been killed and more than 30 injured in a crash outside the city's main cricket stadium. Thousands of fans had packed the streets to celebrate the first ever Indian Premier League title for the Royal Challengers Bengaluru. A federal judge in the United States has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting the family of an Egyptian man charged with carrying out a firebomb attack on a pro-Israeli rally in Colorado. The authorities say Mohammed Sabri Soleiman entered the US on a tourist visa and subsequently claimed asylum. The Trump administration pledged to quickly deport his wife and 5 children, but lawyers for the family say they should not be punished for the actions of Mr. Soleiman. That's the latest BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on your radio dial of 103.1 FM, Bobo FM, and simulcast live over YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook with your hosts, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. Time in studios now 7 minutes exactly past the hour of 6 o'clock here in the studio. As we move into our final half hour, the phone lines remain open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us via WhatsApp by dialing 928-2562. And I'm just going to say send us a traditional WhatsApp text message, seemingly because that's the preferred method this week anyway, as compared to what was preferred in the earlier weeks prior, voice notes. But whatever form you choose to use, we just simply want to encourage it so that we can hear from you and hear your thoughts on some of these subjects. Prior to the break, we were discussing the declining cruise arrivals against the backdrop of increases in stayover, and also highlighting some of the threats from the cruise decline that will undoubtedly produce casualties in the local economy. And where it stops, well, nobody really knows. Ellio?
Yeah, and I just want to highlight something because maybe persons missed it, and I can draw this particular conclusion from at least one text that I received. Nothing happens in a vacuum. So someone would infer that, oh, well, one of the possibilities now is the fact that there's a lowering or a decrease in cruise tourism, that the rental rates would go down because people, are losing businesses, etc. And again, if you're thinking just two-dimensionally or on one angle alone, you could draw that conclusion. But the reality is you've got to put several chairs around the table and jump around and sit in each chair.
Right. We live in a three-dimensional world.
Yeah, you have to sit in all these different chairs. And one of the things is that some of the big players, right, out there who even own buildings, but what are they going to do? Again, they probably have their own vested interest in cruise. I mean, there was at least one that said, we'll go ahead, build the piers and or the dock, and they can just come right in straight into my building. Yep. Well, you can see where increase in rent is going to make people that they have to come out. And you now be able to take advantage of the smaller amount of cruise tourism that you do have. And this is something that I want to be able to highlight again to the minister as well. And by the way, in the spirit of transparency, I did send a text hoping to be able to have a bit of a briefing to him, particularly from the chairmanship of the Turtle Center. But you can see, and I want to encourage him to have a look at this, is that naturally you're going to have now, as you have these diminishing groups, the reducing group of crews, people coming here, the fighting is going to increase because you have the same people that have to eat, but there's a small amount of food, right? You're going to have all of these. You're going to get more and more fighting, whether it's people strategizing in terms of increasing rent and this one getting, and there needs to be cognizant efforts to take care of that and to manage it as best as possible. Hopefully, amongst other things, the minister will see organizations such as ACT as a group that can aid and play a role in all of these processes. But there definitely needs to be a situation where you manage that, because it's going to get bad. I mean, you're already hearing complaints from, the drivers in terms of what are happening. And I am, based on that text, sound like somebody's already making the complaint about rent. These things will occur, and you need to be able to take some action.
Well, I'm glad you made that point specific to, obviously, some of the quote-unquote big fish, big developers, or those with deep pockets, and what sort of actions may occur as an opposite and equal reaction. And certainly, to your point, as cruise declines, we can certainly see those with interests that extend way past just year to year, but perhaps, 5-10-year slots, obviously making some decisions that are important to their business model. And I give you an example. I mean, we will recall a certain development that started, coming up out of the ground on the 7 Mile Beach corridor. And as it started to open its doors, we saw an exodus of those businesses leaving the capital city, Georgetown, and moving to this new location. That resulted in a number of key businesses that had been home to financial services businesses for the past 25, 30, 50 years. All of a sudden now become ghost towns, vacant. Obviously, the value of those buildings as a revenue earner naturally declined as a result, and therefore it created an opportunity for some of those persons with deep pockets to come in and acquire those very same buildings, arguably at pennies on the dollar. Now, I'm not criticizing the businesses. That's just good business. It is what it is. But as we oftentimes see and will recognize, what is good for business does not necessarily equate in what is good for the consumer or the country. Absolutely. So, when you ask the question, whether you're asking it now or you're thinking about it or you're talking about it by the water cooler, I've heard them all. Who owns Cayman, really? These are the conversations in a three-dimensional world that exist. These are the realities. Not pointing a finger, not blaming one, not saying one is better than the next. I'm just saying this is where the dots connect that end up with the results that we say we want to avoid or avoid getting ourselves into, which, of course, reminds me of the old saying, the more things change, the more they stay indeed the same. 745-2626 is the number if you want to jump in on this conversation, if you wish. If you don't, well, we have about 16 minutes, give or take, to start another one.
Of course, not much time left now.
Not much time left now at all, but we do have such an opportunity. I just want to highlight something that I think is an opportunity for us. Ellio, you and I were talking about it prior to the start of the show, and we've, of course, initiated some of those conversations in potential of developing guests for it. But we see in the headlines, again, a story that appeared in the Cayman Compass. Power struggle. Solar could slash power costs, so why is Cayman doubling down on diesel? Again, as summer approaches, we understand and we expect every year that our utility costs are going to go up as the heat index rises. That, of course, is going to have a spillover effect on the consumer's purchasing ability, as well as, of course, again, making the cost of living higher, not lower. But certainly, as this issue of renewable energy, because like the like the stayover policy has set objectives for itself that somehow it's going to double the average annual stayover totals from 500,000 to as much as 1 million a year in 10 years. There has been something, the energy policy, which has already passed, has also set certain targets for Cayman's renewable energy sector, which frankly continues to be pushed further and further into the corner as we seek to embrace, obviously, the fossil fuels sector, in particular in generating what is termed firm energy. And I think it's an important topic to have, particularly against the backdrop of another report that was published a long time ago, but withheld from the public view, arguably because of the local monopoly transmission and distribution company that provides utilities to this country, CUC, saying it didn't want it in the public domain because perhaps it represented or would have shared commercially sensitive information. And whilst that excuse worked for a while, the report finally found its way to the light of day, but nobody has really examined it, and certainly nobody has examined it the way you and I would, Ellio. So I think this article provides us with such a wonderful opportunity.
Well, a good segue.
A good segue. Well, a segue opportunity. It provides us an opportunity to talk about this subject and tie it into that value for solar audit or report that was issued, as well as segue us into the conversation of, really, are we going closer to renewable energy, thereby renewing or reducing our costs, reducing our carbon footprint, supposedly caring about the environment that the eco-activists have, suggested we should do, but they're mum on the issues that really do matter, which, again, that's just me, no focusing on the hypocrisy of it all. But nonetheless, it is an idea and an opportunity, and I say to you and the listening audience that we haven't missed these articles. It's an opportunity, I think, that we look forward to embracing, and maybe as early as next week, we'll be able to host a conversation on the issue of, again, the cost of power and the relationship between renewable energy versus fossil fuels. And I think it'll be very interesting. It's just a matter of finding the right guest, which I believe I have. We just have to, we're just in the early stages of having those conversations with them, but giving the listeners an opportunity, a heads up, if you will.
A little teaser.
A little teaser.
You're good at that, Austin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For what may come around the corner, maybe as early as next week here on the program. But for now, the phone lines remain open, 745-2626, or you can reach out to us at 928-2562 on our WhatsApp number. Whilst we await for persons to either pick up the phone or maybe they're just saying, you know what, the conversation is just so good. You guys go ahead and keep talking to yourselves because we are definitely benefiting from it.
Got a text. 1 second. Forgot to read this text. It was one of those glowing thank yous.
Oh, well, can't forget those.
Who could get upset if we just read a thank you?
Certainly not us.
I mean, come on. Flowers, please. Austin and Ellio, thank you from the bottom of my heart for having these so needed talks. God bless you both. So there you go, Austin.
Oh, well, you are very, very, very welcome. We do enjoy these conversations. We like the opportunity to, as we said yesterday, a lot of these conversations are organic.
Yeah.
They just start with Ellio and I, and we start talking to each other. And sometimes the best shows start from that standpoint. And we really have an opportunity to dissect a number of thoughts. But I do see a caller on the line. So let's, without any further ado, go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah. Good morning, my friend. Good evening. Sorry, not good morning. Good evening.
It's good morning
Ellio.
Somewhere. Good evening to you, sir.
Mario here. Yes. I just got on to your show. I hear you asking for a couple of people to call. I know you got a lot of listeners, but I just wanted to contribute a couple of things and throw a couple of new logs on the fire for you guys to ruminate on and maybe discuss today or subsequent days. The first topic is this whole issue of vaping and these cannabis infused snacks and treats and candies and stuff that are
edible.
Potentially on the edible ones that are on the island and being imported legally or illegally or not being detected and can really cause a major problem with our citizens, especially young people. I was at a session last week that was put on by the National Drug Council and the Youth Services Unit, that they're doing some sessions around the island, trying to engage the population on a study that was done in relation to the whole thing of cannabis use, drug use, the risk of suicide and self-harm, and also the risk of vaping. And unfortunately, the session I attended at the collection center in West Bay and North West Point, which used to be the old Uglan wonderful car museum, which is now a great exhibit from our own museum. It's really good, but they only had, at that session, gentlemen, unfortunately, they only had about probably a dozen to 15 people, and of that 15 people, probably maybe half were from the organizers who were putting on the event. I thought it was disgraceful that we didn't have many more people come out to that, because it was an excellent presentation, very alarming. I mean, when you look at these things around the vaping, for example, one of the learning that I took from there is that some of these vapes, right?
Yep.
Some of them, for example, have the strength. One vape has the strength of 590 cigarettes.
Wow.
So yes, and some children apparently are. And this is research that was presented at these sessions. Like I said, there was other sessions taking place throughout the week. I think the last one was the 3rd of June in Boddown, I believe. I hope it had better attendance. But they talked about some of the children that are buying these vapes because they're readily available. If they buy it themselves, or they get someone to buy them for them. And some of them are actually sharing it and getting other children who can't afford to buy one or who can't get permission to buy it are using it. And potentially we could end up having a young generation that are becoming addicted to nicotine because the strength of these vapes are so much stronger than the cigarettes, and could be also getting addicted to marijuana or drugs because of all these infused
the different oils they have
in the market. Yes, so I just wanted to raise that with you, Jets, to see if you would, add it to your agenda for your great discussion that you're having, and maybe get some folks from the National Drug Council on there, or the Youth Services Unit, people like Jamo Miles and Mr. Miller and those because it is a really, really serious thing. I left that meeting so concerned, but so disgusted that more people didn't come. But I left there with a shock of my life in terms of...
This is where we get, and thank you for raising it. It's definitely something we will do. We will follow up, and we thank you for raising it. But, when we look at sort of the influences on people's mind, I think, for example, in marijuana, clearly I would like to believe, or I wouldn't say I'd like to believe, I believe that, for example, even the legalization of marijuana in several states within the United States has had a big influence on the minds of people in this country, and I'm pretty sure the world, that kind of makes it a bit more social acceptable. And if we look, and if we look now at the referendum that's just passed, again with people 70-something% voting in favor of the decriminalization, you can see where particular our younger persons with their malleable minds again are going to say, well, it seems much more socially acceptable,
Yes.
And it's going to be an even further challenge for parents who don't want that to happen, and for the institutions that, like the NDC and the list goes on. So it's challenging times.
It is, and you're exactly right. And I made that same point at the discussion last week, is that the psyche of the citizens, especially young people, have been so impacted by this whole issue now of this referendum. It makes it worse, and it makes it a bigger issue, and it makes it a perfect storm that's brewing. And like I say, I am worried that we're going to end up one of these days waking up and realize that we have a generation of young people that are addicted to marijuana and to nicotine, instead of not knowing what they've been consuming, because all these stuff are infused and hidden. The second point I want to raise, and I'll leave it after that, is the cost of living has always been a big problem, and especially the last year or so. But especially since the Russia-Ukraine war and all of the issues around the supply chain issues and all that, right? But one of the things that impacted cost of living and prices in the last 6 months is the tariffs. The tariffs that have been brought about by the great economist or North here that is wreaking havoc on the world in terms of all kinds of stuff. But
you can't be talking about Trumponomics, are you?
You'll be
no, what is happening? What is happening? Let me keep on track here now. Don't take me off track here, okay?
Sorry. I digress.
It's like what the Truman used to tell Mr. Benson and vice versa. Don't get me off track here, and don't disturb me when I'm trying to talk. Okay. What's happening is that people are using now all this stuff about tariffs as a good excuse to jack up their prices.
Right.
I'll give you one example. I had a quote for something in my house, in my kitchen. I had a quote late last year, right? And I didn't do the work then because it wasn't convenient. But I got a quote again last week. The price of materials almost doubled.
Yeah.
And I said to the gentleman, I said, how is that possible? Well, the prices have gone up. I said, well, I think people are using this tariffs talk that is, because the tariffs didn't really come into force. They were put out there by great economists to the north, and then they were pulled back, and then they're still being discussed. But people are taking out of the queue. Let's just jack up our prices because these things are coming.
Right.
So what I'm saying
Sometimes
to you
any
is that,
excuse will do to raise prices. You know that.
of course, and the Chamber of Commerce and the Department of Commerce and government and whatever got to keep an eye on this because people are using any excuse to rape the public in terms of price gouging. So I just want to raise that as well. So I left those 2 points with you. Unless you have any questions or you have any time, I'll leave you. But I want to just put those out there for discussion.
No, absolutely, Mario. Thank you very much.
We want to thank you for that, but all I can say is don't forget that your family here now do a little construction too. You know? I'm only.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
I was just saying that I do construction, but I said I'm only joking. I'm not looking no work.
Oh yeah, I know, but I'm saying but you're not going to jack up your prices unfairly. I think I know you better than that.
I was teasing you that you should have called me to do the work. I'm only teasing you.
No, but just for the electrical work, I mean, the guy that was at me, he's at me for a while, so I kind of owe it to him to, if I can do it, just get there. It's not a major project. It's too small for you,
No worry. Here how he teasing me now. Okay, that's a good comeback, Mario.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your
Thank you, guys.
Job too small. That's a good one.
That is. I want to comment, but we got 2 minutes left with another caller on the line. Let's take the caller. Good evening, caller. You're on the air. You got 2 minutes. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, how one is this evening? Bright eyes and bushy tails.
Oh
yeah. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Yes, ma'am. As sure as Christ saved the sinners.
Yes,
died for the sinners.
Died for the sinners.
And they say don't give up till you turn belly up. Things can get better. Think positive. Don't go on the negative. The cruise can get better.
All right.
I am a person that's too easy to get defeated, because like my mom always used to say, don't give up till you turn belly up. Then when that happens, well then it's no more chance for you, because what happened then, you're dead and you can't do nothing when you're dead. So I guess you guys not got no time. So anyway, have a good weekend.
And the good thing about when you're dead, you don't have anything to worry about then either.
I know. And the one thing I worry about, and that's the soul ready with Almighty God, because if not, you're gonna get that big fork that the devil got prepared for you.
Well, I won't let you know.
I don't know where he chose to jug you, but I guess it's where he got the most meat.
Well, I'll let you know before you go that we appreciate you calling. You're one of my inspirations, okay?
Absolutely.
But I'm not going to hell. I'm going to heaven. My sister is Christian. She told me she wants to get in. And so, I'll be out there when the roll is called.
There you go.
We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Caller, thank you very much for... we do appreciate hearing from you. And it's not quite the weekend yet. It's only Wednesday, so you get another opportunity to give us a call tomorrow or Friday, perhaps, when we have a bit more time to hear from you. But it is, unfortunately, all good things come to an end. 29 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock is the time, and we have to say farewell for another day. Thank you to those two callers who joined in. Thank you for everyone who tuned in, albeit didn't participate on the phone lines. Thank you to those who made contributions via WhatsApp. We do appreciate it, and as always, we hope you appreciate the quality of content that we share with you Monday through Friday right here on Straight Talk, proudly brought to you by Bobo 103.1 FM.
The home of the BBC